106.1 KZCC, Conroe, Texas, or online, irlonestar.com.
God's Garage is a 501c3 that repairs and gives away cars for free to single moms, widows, and wives of deployed military. You can help God's Garage by donating a vehicle, volunteering your time, or by monetary donation. God's Garage is located at 2106 East Davis, Conroe. If you'd like to learn more about God's Garage, visit our website at godsgarage.org. Or you can contact us and we would be glad to come and make a presentation to your group.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
You're listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. I'm Rick Schissler. I'm your host. I'm also a Silver Fox advisor and the founder of onebestconsult.com. Today we're broadcasting live from the studios of Lone Star Community Radio. That's the community radio station for Montgomery County, Texas. And if you're listening from some other part of the country or outside our country, this is a place where there's lots and lots of good business going on. It's one of the fastest growing areas in the United States. In fact, our county seat where we're actually located, Conroe, is one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing city in its size category. Pretty darn amazing to be where all this business is going on. And if you're from Conroe or Montgomery County, I encourage you, step up, join the community, become part of Lone Star Community Radio. It's a nonprofit. We're all volunteers, wonderful shows and other events that the station's involved in, and it provides a contact and music for you 24/7. So step up, join the community, Lone Star Community Radio. Let me give a quick thought to you. What is the thing that most people, or the thing or issue that's being most talked about these days? Well, I'd have to say is what's going on with my bank. Everywhere I go, whether it be on a community board that I serve on, or boards of larger corporations, or at church on Sunday. Everybody's concerned to some degree or another about their bank and what's going on. You know, I was reading a recent release of the CIO Strategy Bulletin dated March 26 from Citigroup, and it said most but not all developed market banks are both well capitalized and have strong access to liquidity. The banking system is fundamentally stronger and better managed than it was back in 2008, 2009, the last time we had a big issue with our financial system. Nonetheless, banks face increasing depositor market scrutiny intensified by the ambiguous comments from regulators and policymakers. So it appears that Citibank thinks it's a leadership issue. Leadership primarily at the government level, whether it be the Fed or the Treasury Department, et cetera. But there's one thing that I think is very important for us as small business owners, managers, and it's something that will be impacted regardless of how strong your bank is. As these banks all run to meet what will be new regulations, you can count on that, right? As you can count on sheep in your sleep. What's going to happen, though, is getting a loan going forward, at least for a year or two, most likely, is going to become more difficult. And something you need to consider, if you need a loan, you're looking to expand your business, you're increasing inventory, your business is doing well because, wow, you're located right here in Montgomery County where businesses are booming, then you need to go ahead and line that up now because I really think we're in that calm before the storm. It might not be noticeable on a billboard or on the news, but bank lending, if it follows course of history, every time we have one of these financial strains, then everything gets tightened up. To me, it's an overkill situation, but it happens, and it is projected by experts time and again. I saw information articles I came across that this is going to happen again. No surprise. So if you need a loan, you're going to need a loan. You want to build a new building, go to work on it now, even though it may be a bit premature. Line your money up, because it's going to be harder as we wait and go through the weeks and months to come. The Weekly Business Hour is where Montgomery County and businesses now throughout the world, thanks to the internet, come to talk about the latest in business news, ideas to improve your business, and to be part of conversations that we hope can make a real difference in your business. If you're listening to today's show and you'd like to watch as well as listening, we got you covered. Go to Facebook. You can go to YouTube, look for the Weekly Business Hour page, click on it, and then you will see, click on the button, and you can watch as well as listen to the program. Also, if you have a comment, you have a question, observation, constructive, and I emphasize constructive criticism, please drop me an email. Even if it's just a business challenge you're facing, I'd be glad to look at it. We respond to those. Oftentimes, we even talk about them on the air, keeping you anonymous, but we'd like to understand the challenges that our listeners are going through. So drop me an email. It's real simple. Send it to bestconsult@gmail.com. That's bestconsult@gmail.com. Well, today I think we have something very special lined up for you. Got a good friend of the show. Mr. Rich Hall is going to be here today. And Rich has an amazing background. He's a fellow Silver Fox advisor, and that in of itself for me makes it special. But Rich is the owner of the Rich Hall Group. He's a certified exit planning advisor, and he specializes in mid-market business growth and exit preparation. And he also was recently recognized as one of the top 15 small business coaches in the greater Houston area. So we got a lot of expertise and a lot of experience on the floor today. Ladies and gentlemen, Rich Hall, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Rick. Good to be back and good to speak to your listeners today. We'll have a good time.
Well, there's no doubt about it, and we're going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's one that I learned about when I first joined the Silver Foxes, believe it or not, as far as in depth. Our good friend Monty Pendleton, the Silver Foxes put on a one-day, half-day seminar for the Small Business Administration and the people at University of Houston. And Monty got up on stage, and there was 100-plus people in the audience, and he held up a dollar bill. And I still have mine because he passed one out to everybody in the audience, a crisp new dollar bill. And he says, I want you to do something for me, right? You've probably heard this story. Write down when you want to sell your business, to whom you want to sell it to, and how much are you looking for. Now, the whom is more of a strategic decision. Is it family? Do I pass it on? Do I sell it to someone who wants to start or be involved in a new business? And then when? Pick a year. You don't have to be precise. And write that on your dollar bills, he told everybody in the audience. And then you frame it right, just like we did in the old days. First dollar I took in, framed it and put it over behind the counter so everybody could see it as time went on. And that's why I first really got interested in planning my exit strategy. And today there is so much to it if, in fact, you want to maximize, the way I look at it, maximize the return for you and your family when you finally do sell your business. Well, let's kind of jump into that topic. I mean, you've got a lot of good background and information, and now you're a certified exit planner. Let's just stop for a second. What does that mean?
Well, it's people that look to sell their business, and if you think you've had a privately held businesses an entire lifetime, this is your baby. And for most business owners, 80% of their personal wealth is tied up in the business. Now, your standard employee doesn't have that kind of business ownership, right? So they're usually more diversified. So you've got a business owner that has really enjoyed, say, the fruits of their business, but they're also banking on the business at some point in time to provide a great retirement for them. Well, here's the thing about when you get ready to exit a business. There's actually three aspects of it that people really need to realize. Number one is there's also the business itself. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but is it ready to be sold? Is there a buyer out there? What condition is it in? And again, we'll talk a little bit more about the business itself. What kind of value will you get for your business? Okay. And there's some shocking statistics on it. Believe it or not, only 2 to 3 out of 10 businesses that are put up for sale actually sell. So think, coming up in the next 10 to 15 years, we're looking at over $60 trillion coming up for transition from the baby boomers that are looking at retirement. So this is an enormous amount of transfer of wealth. Well, your exit planners like myself look at 3 avenues. One is obviously the business, and that's where a lot of my expertise is at. Number 2 is financially, do you have the money to retire? People think about, yeah, I'm making good money today, and here's the kind of retirement I'd like to have, but have they really put pencil to paper to it? And here's the other thing. 75% of all private business owners that sell their company regret doing so within 1 year. And why is that? Because it's been their life. And they didn't make plans over what the future looks like for them after working 40, 50, 60 hours a week for decades on this business, and all of a sudden they wake up the next day and say, what am I going to do? What's going to take up my time? So these exit planners like myself, CEPA as we call it, CEPA, the CEPAs help work with the business owners on all 3, personal, business, and financial.
Well, and you bring up a big deal, and I think everyone out there should hear this. $60+ trillion in business assets, small business, medium-sized business are going to be sold, and over the next 10 or 15 years. So there are a lot of questions about the market and all that. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, I always come back to that number you mentioned: 3 out of 10 is what sells. In other words, the other 7, for whatever, a lot of different reasons, from what I understand, don't sell. Yes. So if you expect to sell your business, it's something you need to pay attention to, right? I mean, Monty made it, you paid attention to it when you started the business. And I've advised clients over the years, one of the things you do in planning for your business, which is hard to get small business people to plan, generally speaking, but is to take at least a snapshot look with that dollar bill and put that into your thinking. So as you build towards that exit, which it really should be a building process, right? I mean, you don't just wake up one day and say, I want to sell my business.
Well, you're right, Rick. Unfortunately, a lot of business owners do, right? They get up to the point where they wake up one day and they say, I've had enough, I'm tired. My wife, I've got kids, I've got grandkids, it's time to spend with them. The problem is, and those numbers are 2 to 3 of actually selling, or is accurate. And we can talk in a second about why those are. What makes it so low? Why do they not sell? I think that's very important. But most businesses, or privately held businesses, are actually what you call lifestyle businesses, right? It's our family business that we've got. We run our, as many things through the business as we can to get tax write-offs. It provides us a great income for our family, a great lifestyle. But what you have to look at is, how does that business look to an outside buyer or investor? They're not going to look at the business the same way as you do. They may turn around and say, well, if we had to bring in our own CEO, we're not going to pay him that much. Or we may want to roll this company up into other aspects of our larger business and change things up some. So usually this preparation we're talking about, just to sell your business nowadays. So if you woke up and said, all right, today I've had enough, I want to call a business broker, I want to call a financial advisor or a M&A person. It takes about a year to 18 months to sell a business. Okay. But to really get the value, and we can talk about what value looks like and how people determine value nowadays, it can be typically about a 3-year process. So we tell business owners, sit down, think about it today, and don't forget the 3 stools. Sit down with your spouse, with your kids, with the kids' spouses, and say, this is what the business looks like. What do we want out of it, both business-wise, the value of the business, and again, personal and financial. And all 3 of those are very important for it to be successful.
You know, you really hit on something that I think is critical, and that is taking the time and talking to your partners, whether they're in your corporate documents or whatever form you're in, but you have all these silent partners, typically family. And their needs, wants, concerns, questions need to be addressed. Some cases that's very, very difficult to address that, but it's once that business sells, then their lives potentially are going to change as well. Any advice for people how to approach that conversation, particularly if I haven't talked to anybody for 20, 30 years?
Yeah. It's usually, especially, I've got a lot of background in working with family-owned businesses. I've been through some where I've helped go through very successful exits. Okay, and again, the scenario we talked about, they now no longer own their business, and what are they going to do with their time? The money for them was not the issue. What are they going to do with their time? It's tough talking with family, because each different family member may have different opinions about what the next phase looks like. And as an example, the husband and wife, depending on who wants it, really have to be in tune. Okay. But you also want to take it to the next generation, your kids and their spouses, because all of these are influences. A lot of times it's easier to bring in somebody like either an advisor or to somebody to facilitate these family meetings. So you make sure that they focus on all of the relevant aspects of discussion, not just how are we going to spend the money. A great example is ask, okay, what are you going to do with the next phase of your life? And people may say, oh, well, I want to retire on a golf course. Oh, great, you love golf, right? Yeah, absolutely, I love golf. Are you going to play golf 8 hours a day for the next 20 years of your life? What's next? You've been so excited about, say, business. Oh, I want to travel. Okay, great. But in other words, flush it out to the next level of detail. So there's actually a plan. And then when you have that plan, now you can turn around and say, okay, with this lifestyle that we want to have, here's how much money we're going to need to have. Here's how much we have today. Here's our personal wealth that we have today. Here's what we're going to need. Let's identify the gap. And that's where the business valuation comes in.
One of the things that I have found that people miss as well, the personal communication we just talked about with the family. But another thing which is amazing, and it kind of goes back to what our friend Monty Pendleton says in one of his 3 questions, which I think is critical. But I've had people absolutely drop the ball on this, is how much money are you looking for, or what value are you looking for? Transition it to a family member or to a loyal employee or employees, whatever. But what are you looking for? And one of the worst things I've ever been involved in is somebody who woke up, they were ready to sell, they'd worked that long time, husband and wife. It was true family business. Everybody, kids had been involved. And when you sat down to evaluate the business and value the business, it wasn't worth but about 60% of what their financial goals were. Mm-hmm. They lived out of the business day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, and everybody was happy. But all of a sudden, we need to cash out, we need to move on. We planned to do it, but we never sat and talked or tried to calculate with our CPA or financial planner. And boy, surprise. Boy, you talk about a mess.
I have seen those myself. And imagine going back to our conversation, we're looking at $60 trillion in the next 10 to 15, greatest transfer of wealth in the history of our country. We've got baby boomers that have worked their entire lives, and yet they get ready. And why is it that 8 out of 10 don't sell? I think it's a great discussion that we can have.
Yeah, absolutely. And that people need to hear some of those statistics we're talking about. They need to hear them all, but there's some extremes here, and that's one of them. This should open everybody's eyes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're to a break. We need to take a commercial break. We come back, we're going to continue this conversation with Rich, which I think you're beginning to get a sense that this could really go on for hours. But we're going to talk about some more issues, and we can follow up with you. Rich is always available, so I appreciate it. And please stay with us, and we'll be right back with you.
Don't forget to download the Lone Star Community Radio app from your Google Play or Apple Store. Bring Montgomery County's community radio with you anywhere with your smartphone or tablet. If you are in the Conroe area, tune in on FM. That's Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1. If you are on the computer, bookmark irlonestar.com as your internet radio station. A Lone Star Community Radio. Broadcasting 24/7 from the heart of downtown Conroe, Texas.
We have the safest food supply in the world. Strict laws and regulations restrict the usage of hormones, antibiotics, and pesticides within our food supply. Production agriculture practices and technologies such as the use of GMOs, which is not any more or less risky than conventional crop production, has allowed American farmers to produce more food on less acres in environmentally sound ways. Find out more online at pathtotheplate.tamu.edu. We are Texas A&M Agri-Life Extension, helping Texans make lives better.
Hey, tune in to the Bridge Podcast TX Tuesdays at 11 a.m., where we are connecting commerce with community, interviewing business owners and leaders in the community, allowing the audience to peek behind the curtain of what inspires, motivates, drives these individuals to have meaningful, positive impact in this community. For more information about the show, log into irlonestar.com/TBPTX.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. I'm Rick Schissler. I'm your host, and we're in the middle of a conversation with Mr. Rich Hall, who is a certified exit planner, among many, many other talents. One of the things, Rich, that you do, and I failed to mention it, but I think it's interesting, is you mentor or oversee 2 CEO roundtables the Silver Foxes are involved in, and then you also have 2 mastermind groups. This gives you access to a whole bunch of folks, a pretty good, 40, 50 people that you are listening or hearing on what's going on and where they're thinking, and how valuable is that?
That is actually a blast because it keeps me in tune with exactly what's going on with businesses of all sizes and what's going on in the minds of business owners and CEOs. As you know, you're part of the Silver Fox. One of my roundtables has some larger businesses, and we would say 50, 75 million, that size, all the way down to, say, $500,000 to $1 million. You know, what are the issues that they're facing? Okay. The mastermind groups that I run are nationwide. So number one, I'm kept in touch with regional issues or things that may come up. But newer topics that people don't always, think about may impact their business, like your AI. And people talk about the Chat GPT and how much fun that is. I've done some presentations to the CEOs about ways that they can leverage that for their business, and immediately there's applications that they see that can really help the bottom line. So it keeps me in touch with a lot of what's going on in the business world, as well as businesses of all sizes.
One of the things that really pops up, and I'm sure you've been involved with, again, I admire your opportunity to plug into people that are out there that have that mentoring relationship with you, so people will reveal, based on the confidentiality they feel, what's really going on. But people begin to exit their business. Some of us think you begin the day you open. Some people, or a majority of people, unfortunately, wait till the day they're tired, or when COVID hit. I can't tell you how many, I lost track of how many people just made a decision they were going to exit in 2, 3, 5 years, but the strain of COVID and having to adjust and change and closed, and they just locked up and left, so to speak, and gave it up prematurely, which had to be, was so frustrating. What is the value of the business? I mean, if in fact, which you would think most, if not all people, would want to get a maximum return on the sale of their business, get the best price possible, but the valuation of the business, that actually the value, it's just not there. I mentioned the one case that I was involved in, which was a real shocker, but there's some particular things that hit people that people need to be aware of, all these traps that will cause the value to be lowered, sometimes significantly.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think it's worth having a brief discussion on some approaches over how do you evaluate a business, right? Because you've got investment bankers, you've got M&A advisors, you've got private equity groups, and all of these have different methods. But here's what a lot of it comes down to. Your first is you want your financial person, whether it's your CPA, CFO, to pull out your financials, and you want to look at EBITDA, right? So EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. Okay. And here's the thing. There's two sets of EBITDA. Most company financials are based upon, for the purposes of tax, right? You want to be able to identify as much as you can that can be legally written off so you can minimize your income and therefore minimize your taxes. Okay. But for the purposes of evaluating a company, you want to do something that's called either normalize or recast, which means go back through that and all of those items that are run through the business that say are not core for the daily operations of the business, add that back into the number, because that's what an investor is going to be looking at. Okay, so now you've got this new set of EBITDA here that says, on the surface, this is what is bringing in for the company. Now, depending on the industry, the type company it is, a lot of different factors, there's a range of multiples that'll happen. Okay, a multiple meaning how many times EBITDA is an investor willing to pay you for your company? Okay, it can range anywhere from 0 up to, say, 10 times, but you may even have, technology companies, things like that, go even a whole lot higher than that. Okay, there's ways of identifying and evaluating the business to identify where you would come in that range that would also give you a pretty good idea of what the value of the company would be. And that's part of what we do when we sit down with business owners, is saying, hey, let's get a snapshot. This is where it looks like you're coming in today. But you know what? These are some things that we can look at, or you can look at, business owner, to how to, one, increase the EBITDA, and then number two, drive up those multiples so you're getting 2 jumps on your value of the company. And it's amazing how far that can come.
The value, I've had 2 cases that always stick with me about value directly or indirectly. One of them is the situation where I had a client and they had been working with an advisor who retired, so I was fortunate enough to get the business, and they wanted to grow the business. Now, they had a 15, 20-year track record as a small, basically a sole proprietor business, but they had done well. I mean, they had put money aside, and it fit their personality. But he wanted to grow. He wanted to take the next 10 years and really push it. And he had a plan, and on paper the plan looked good, but it really wasn't good for him and how he approached things. but he insisted that we do this. So what he had to do, like so many folks, he had to borrow some money. In his case, it was a line of credit, and to cover his receivables, because he ramped it up, brought a partner in that had the ability to, carry their weight and do a different thing and make it grow. And the business, I'm serious, from day one, it just started growing. And through the first year, met all the targets on paper. But he was a nervous wreck because he owed money, and to him it was a lot of money. And he came to me and says, I can't do this. Well, I said, you're hitting all the metrics or exceeding them that you set and your projections and all that. He says, yeah, but this is just too, I said, well, the growth with risk, it's, and I said, but I understand what you're saying. And fortunately, which is somewhat unusual, we were able to unwind where he didn't lose hardly any money out of his pocket. Put him back exactly where he was.
Yeah.
No partner, no nothing, and back on his track. And I that kind of situation. So when we set a value or set that goal where we think we want to go, we need to weigh the risk. And I always encourage people, take a snapshot of yourself and your partners, your silent partners, your family, and make sure they're willing. And in his case, his wife was part of it. She and he together just weren't built to do that.
Yeah.
And people miss little things. And there's a whole list of things that come up when we're trying to build that value to a point that as far as we want that pot of gold, but are we really geared? Can we make it happen? And that's always the open question.
And that goes back to our conversation about what is so important is don't forget the personal, the financial, and the business aspect. Because to your point, if the business is growing fantastic, but you lose your family, you lose your marriage over it, you can have all the money in the world, and then your kids want nothing to do with you because you were never there. So it's a balance that you have to go through as a business owner. And I like to say to people, anyone who thinks that being the CEO or the head of a business is easy, well, guess what? They've never done it before. Your every day is about dealing with priorities and challenges and juggling. And that's where it's important. Sit down and have honest conversations. Either be a part of a peer group, have an advisor, talk with family members, and really make sure everybody's on the same page when you go through this journey.
Yeah, and it's something you have to check in, the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. A peer group, a Silver Fox CEO roundtable, whatever it takes. There's lots of opportunities out there, and I always feel that anyone who truly wants to build a business needs to connect. I was blessed to be able to do that when I was building businesses, and I can even quantify the numbers in what sense it made. The second example I was called into a case. Husband and wife had built a business over 20, 30 years or more, done really well. But it was kind of like it reached the point they wanted to sell because the age, plus their children lived literally all over the world. So they wanted to be able to have that freedom. But right within the 6-12-month period they wanted to, their business took off. It had that graph that gradually grew and did all this, and they'd done well. But all of a sudden that graph, it didn't turn straight up, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
And it projected. It was the economy, it was some things that it was all in their favor. And I ended up advising them. I said, take 2 or 3 more years. I said, because if you really expect you can put it here from here, you're talking about a lot more money, a multiple that you will put in your pocket. And yes, they wanted to retire. They were in their 60s, had every right to. They'd worked hard, hand in hand, and they backed up, and they stayed in the business, and it grew through the roof. So, there are all kinds of scenarios.
Yeah.
And it's making that right decision.
What I share with business owners I work with is, planning for an exit and preparing for an exit is just good business sense. Your company is, in essence, what you're doing is from your business is preparing it to be attractive if the right kind of opportunity to sell comes up. It may not be a timing thing as much as it is you may get that phone call one day and your business is prepared to sell at a maximum value. It's also the ongoing conversation we talk. Be on top of the financial aspects. What do you need for retirement? Where are you at today? What do you need from the business? Is there a gap? If there is, let's start working the gap. Same thing on, like you said, personal. And when you get all three of those going at the same time, it's actually very cool. But usually those that do it have a plan, and they work through that plan.
Right, and they can find success. And let's talk about the issue. We've talked about the plan and how it really can make a difference. But how long do I need to take, best case, to plan the actual sale of my business? I know we have Monty's philosophy, which I happen to agree with, but hell, it's hard to get people playing. But I actually, taking on a new client, won't even take a client on unless they'll answer those 3 questions for me.
Right.
And I've had some that just couldn't do it. They didn't, all they could see was tomorrow. But okay, I'm down the road. I've been in business 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever time, and I realize ultimately I want to sell this business. That had been a goal. But how long should I allow myself to get the business in potentially the best condition and the best shape and make it as attractive as possible?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting answer to that, Rick, because some businesses may be ready today. So the time would be very short. And depending on the size of the company could also dictate who gets involved. Again, usually companies maybe $5 million in revenue and below may go to like a business broker. Okay, then above that you may have M&A advisors, you may get private equity, and there's a lot of different scenarios. You may even turn around and say, I want to keep it in the family, or I want to sell back some to the employees. So you may have an ESOP. So ESOPs are great for like taking some chips off the table, for the family, eliminate some of your personal risk. So it depends. But what I like to do is I say, listen, let's plan on minimum. Let's take a snapshot. Let's look at where you're at today. And there's a little exercise to go through and do that. And again, personal, business, and financial. But then you get a snapshot of what the value is today. But you can also look at it and say, all right, but based on your type business and based on what the markets are saying out there, and there's data out there about it, here's what a best-in-class business would sell for. Now we know the gap, right? Here's where we're at today. Here's what best-in-class. So do we want to make that decision to improve the value of the company, to approach better-in-class, to get the more value? If so, I like to work in short, what I call 90-day sprints. Okay, let's identify the top 5 priorities, and let's work on those for 90 days. And then at the end of 90 days, did it move the needle? And if it did, let's talk about it. Are you ready to sell? Or do you want to keep and do another 90 days? So that way, you're constantly, as a business owner, involved, and you're saying, yeah, I don't have to be best in class. I think now we've improved it well enough. This will cover my gap for retirement. Now let's switch over to sell mode and go down that process.
That's interesting, the 90-day or 6 months, whatever period. I like that. I've never really, can't recall ever considering that in this context of exit planning for a business to encourage people to take those steps and evaluate. I've done it in other parts of business, but and personally with personal goals. So I think that there's a lot of good advice there. Well, as we're coming down to the end of our time, let's kind of wrap it up, and if you don't mind, summarize several points that you feel or hope that people would take away from the conversation today.
I think the biggest is understanding if you're a business owner today, and you're looking at retirement at some point in the future, it's just good common business sense to start thinking about what the exit may look like, even if you don't have it on the horizon at this point. Begin with the end in mind, and start having conversations. Identify your core team. Now, your core team initially in this discussion would be like a CPA, your financial advisor, maybe your wealth advisor if you have one, an attorney. And then if you decide that, I'd like to explore this a little bit further, reach out to one of these exit planners like these CEPAs, and then have some conversations. There's no cost to have conversations, and then there are steps that you can put in place so then you know what the future is going to look like and where your business is coming in. And if it's not where you want it to be, you got time to make those changes to get it there. Do not wait to the last minute, because here's the parting fact. If $68 trillion is going to be transitioned in the next 10 to 15 years, you don't want to wait until 15 years because you're going to have a flood of businesses to be sold. And supply overcomes demand at that point, and the value may be tough to capture. So I'd start sooner than later planning this thing out.
Yeah, well, I echo that. That's excellent advice. You're listening to today's program, you're listening to the podcast replay. You need to take a look at this idea of exit planning, and you need to, if you haven't already done so, put together some information, potentially reach out to someone. Rich, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, had a question or a comment or need some help, what's the best way for them to do that?
A couple of ways. Email me is fine. It's rich.hall@richhallgroup.com. We could also meet up on LinkedIn, be happy to connect, or my website, richhallgroup.com.
Rich, can't thank you enough for coming in. This has been a great conversation, in my opinion. There's lots of other nuances that get into exit planning. I'm glad to see you're now a certified exit planner. And again, folks, when you go to sell your business, if you're looking to maximize value, you need to engage someone like Rich that can help guide you and touch the bases, go down the checklist with you, and help you build real value that is saleable. Those two things go hand in hand, as I hope you've learned today. Well, I hope you'll stick around for the back half of the show. I'm going to go through some local business news you can use. Recent Community Impact showed clear evidence of the growth in new businesses opening here in Montgomery County. And if we have time, the topic I've tried to address for several weeks, but we seem to run out of time. We're just having too much fun visiting with our guest. And that, where is the recession they promised, and should I really care? If we get to it, we'll get to it. If not, because there's new little angles that come up about this recession, but it's still, nobody's really called what it is or not is. Anyway, we'll get to that because it's an important topic. I personally get asked about it every day by people in business. So please stay with us, and don't forget, Wednesday of this week, the podcast, video cast will be available throughout social media. Just go to YouTube. You can go anywhere on social media, and you can catch the weekly business hour. So stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
A Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show, with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Vail Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit, began in 2014 with a mission to strengthen the future of veterans through leadership and entrepreneurship training. We've invested over 1,400 hours of training in our veterans while connecting them with community entrepreneurs and leaders. Our mission is to continue investing in our veterans who have given so much for our country. Please join us in our mission by visiting velinstitute.org. That's VELinstitute.org.
Listen in Mondays at noon to hear Conroe news from local nonprofits, businesses, upcoming events, Conroe Park events, news stories, and information that matters to you with your host, Margie Taylor of Taylorized PR. For more information about being a guest, visit irlonestar.com/Conroe Culture.
A Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question or comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station at irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
Are you interested in learning more about preparing quick, healthy, and safe meals for your family? Would you like to spend time with others learning tips and tricks, along with practicing and tasting nutritious food? If so, the On the Road to Healthy Living Mobile Cooking School is for you. Call Amy Ressler at Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service at 936-539-7825 to find a class near you or volunteer to host a class.
Hey y'all, it's DJ Mike from Dance Time in Texas. Join me Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. as I count down the top 10 Texas Red Dirt songs that are packing the dance floor. I'll be featuring local artists and the story behind the hits, shows in the area, as well as new songs that make you want to dance. It's Dance Time in Texas with DJ Mike on Lone Star Community Radio, 104.5 KCZW and 106.1 KZCC, Conroe, Texas, or online, irlonestar.com.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are to the final segment of our Today Show. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Rich Hall, and if you didn't hear it all or would like to re-listen, because he came across with many, many facts and concepts that are worthy of your consideration, just look for the podcast, videocast later this week. It'll be posted YouTube, also posted on Facebook, on the website here at the station, irlonestar.com, under the Weekly Business Hour tab. So look for that conversation, and if you don't mind, if you know someone in business that it would be of value, please share it with them. We're always looking for new folks to join our community here at the Weekly Business Hour. At this point, what I'd like to do is talk about some business, what's going on in our community. And as I've said on several occasions before in the show, one of the best ways to stay up with what's going on around us is to make sure you're on the subscription list for the Community Impact magazine. The Community Impact comes out on a monthly basis, and it is a great way to get a snapshot, if you've got a few minutes, of what's going on in business in the area. And the most recent edition that came out on March 21st, covering the period from March 21st to April 24th, has a lot of information that can impact your business. And I want to touch on several of those items. First of all, if you didn't know, TxDOT has begun that project, actually been at it for a few years, on the idea of widening and making the I-45 corridor to Conroe have the ability to carry more traffic more efficiently. Because if they don't do something, it's not too far down the road, then it will be nearly impossible, at least within a reasonable period of time, to travel between Conroe and Houston. So this is a project that your business may want to keep an eye on, as it may relate directly to traffic and flow of people, access, people wanting to live here, to travel into Houston for jobs and business. It's a very important project. It's going to take a long time to complete and cost a lot of money, but it is definitely on the front burner with TxDOT at the current time. Also want to mention some businesses that opened. They always have a great section of businesses that are open Obviously, there's a lot of restaurants. We got a new crust pizza up in Willis. We also have an office suites that opened up in Magnolia. Magnolia Woods Office Suites and Meeting Space. Actually, it's not in Magnolia, it's on Walden Road. Lots of folks in business can utilize what these office suites have to offer. If nothing else, they're meeting rooms. I've held meetings in office suites when I didn't have an office there, but they'll rent you a room so you can have a conference or whatnot, and it works out well. Another restaurant, or if you will, a food truck, She Brews, is opened off of 1488, and they serve Israeli food as well as coffee. So that's a little unusual. I would check out She Brews if you're looking for a little different twist on food. Continue to have expansion in the medical community, which I find encouraging. Memorial Hermann is opening what they have labeled as a Go Health urgent care in Willis, which is part of that expansion going on in Willis around the 1097 exit there. A lot of growth, beautiful new shopping center there on the southeast corner is opened. And now there's a Memorial Hermann facility, Go Health urgent care available for folks in that area. New AT&T store opened over on Highway 242. Lots of cell phone stores make it available, so if you need some help or need a new phone. We also got a new ice house. I love ice houses because ice houses to me are kind of historical. They've been around for a long, long time. But the Moonshine Deck Ice House opened over on 6446 effing 1488. And I encourage you, if you enjoy the ice house decor and enjoy hanging out, check them out and let us know. Also, I want to mention that Sapphire Gas Solutions made a very generous contribution recently to the Conroe Fire Department. They donated a piece of equipment that should help the firefighting process, and it was a fully mobile Purple Cave fire extinguisher, in other words, like a foam truck. And they had used it in their projects and felt that they no longer needed it, so they donated it to the fire department. And finally, we have now another cigar store. Cigar stores opened up in the Wood Forest area. So I think that's kind of interesting. It's called Bespoke Cigar Lounge. So for those that enjoy smoking a good cigar, you're going to have a place that you can go and hang out and smoke your cigars. Some other things that are currently showing up in the Impact magazine, Lone Star Family Health Center, a very important part of our community, providing health care for those that otherwise might not be able to afford it. They recently got a large grant, over $900,000, to help fund adult dental service, cancer screenings, and upgrading their buildings and expanding their behavioral health programs. They do a great job in this community. If you have a need or know someone, I would absolutely send them to Lone Star Family Health Center. It's a great place to stay healthy if you can't afford traditional health care or don't have health insurance. Also, we have a lot of work going on with children in our community. And one of the things I'm personally proud of being a citizen here in Montgomery County, is the number of organizations that are truly passionate and committed to taking care of the children in need. And this happens through our CASA operation, Yes to Youth. I mean, the list goes on and on. Where there's a newer organization that's out there, it's Trails Home for Children. It's a nonprofit. They're opening up some centers around the area, one in Spring, one in Magnolia. Again, focusing on kids that need a place, that for whatever reason have been excluded and need a place so that they can be nurtured and grow and become hardworking, productive citizens of our community. Well, that's the community business news that I have for you. And again, I just went through the most recent edition of Community Impact. If you're not a subscriber, don't have access to a copy of it, I encourage you. I think every business in the Montgomery County area should at least have access to the Community Impact to do what you can do to stay up on what's going on around you and your business. Because one of the things I found out when I was in business is we wanted another location, or we wanted to stay on top of potentially moving our location, and having this kind of information provided by sources and resources like Community Impact can really pay off. So I encourage you, stay in touch with what's going on in our community. I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank Rich Hall for joining us. Enjoyed that conversation. There's a lot more to know, and encourage you, if you have questions, reach out to Rich. And you can reach out to the show as well. But you need to plan the exit of your business. And this week, all I can say in the coming week is stay engaged and always keep your focus on what counts in your business. Thanks.